We move on to the Commanders next, Kieran O'Donovan. And if you're the Cowboys or the Giants, certainly you're kind of hoping that Jayden Daniels has a sophomore slump. Maybe some of the minor discontent in the camp. Terry McLaurin might be on his way out the door. Brian Robinson probably is. But they've been recruiting actively too, and they brought in some good names, including Deebo Samuel, to bolster the cast around Daniels. Maybe he doesn't have to make the year 2 leap because he did it all in year 1, kind of similar to what maybe we saw with CJ Stroud when he came into the NFL. Like, what do you want from him other than to do exactly what he did last year, which was amazing. But there are people who have the Commanders penciled in as maybe a regression candidate. They did, after all, have a lot of close wins. There were sliding doors moments. You know, I remember one of them particularly well in the Hail Mary game where they beat the Bears on that particular play, a game they probably deserved to win on balance, but could easily have lost. There's a few in there that, you know, contributed to that 12-5 season that put them in a great position ultimately to go to the championship game. I mean, you're in a strange situation here where the Commanders only really have one place to go on the up, and that's to get to the Super Bowl. And yet they might be put to the pin of their collar to get back to where they were.
Yeah, my dad used to always have a great saying. He said, "You'll never see a bookie on a bike." And the over, and you can see the over, like they went 12-5 last season, and the over and under is 9.5 this season. And again, I mentioned a while ago, part of that might be because I think they're going to get played tougher again within the division this year when we talk about the remaining 2 teams. It's not necessarily that Jayden Daniels might have a sophomore slump. I mean, he was so impressive and so composed last season. I can't see how he couldn't run it back and be as, I suppose, as good, as talented and show the quality that he showed last year. The problem is the couple of doubts that remain within the squad. You mentioned them already. Brian Robinson, they're probably going to lose him, and I mean, then you've got questions at running back, which, you know, we talk about establishing the run to complement the pass game. Terry McLaurin, is that deal going to get done or is it not? I would suspect that they will get him in, and that deal will be done. But until it's a done deal, you just can't be sure. You just can't guarantee that he's going to be in the building. They've lost De'Ami Brown as well, which I think is an understated loss. Now they have brought in Deebo Samuel, and depending on what version of Deebo you get, that could be a huge acquisition for them as well. I just think that a year on, and they were the team that none of us expected to do what they did last year. They played. We talk about house money, and I know you don't like that phrase, but they really played like a team who had nothing to lose last year, and they were every bit value for their regular season record. I know they didn't get the fairy tale ending, should I say? But I just think that teams are going to be more prepared for them this year. They're going to have more tape on Daniels, and just by virtue of the fact that it is his second season, I don't expect him to regress competency wise or anything like that. I just think that he's going to get a tougher ride this year, and I could see a slight regression. I'm not saying they're going to hit the floor or anything like that, but I could see this division in general being a lot tighter this year. Yeah.
Kieran O'Donovan kind of hits on an interesting point there, and it's one that I kind of had marked down myself here too, which is that it's not necessarily that Jayden Daniels has a sophomore slump, but we saw a certain amount of this movie with the Texans, who I think do serve as a good comparison, in that you had a head coach who comes in there, just gets the tempo of the locker room, gets people pointed in the right direction. You have an OC come in, and Cliff Kingsbury, you put in front of Daniels just what he needed to do to succeed. But every DC around the league, and the other pretty formidable defensive coordinators in the NFC East, are breaking all that down. And we've seen this. We'll talk about the Dolphins when we get to our AFC East preview. Guy who has a good scheme in year 1, you got to put another 50% on it in year 2, because people figure it out pretty damn quickly, and you can find yourself running to stand still.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that went from 4 wins in 23 to 12 last year. I mean, that's not all that common. It is now and again, but it's not a kind of a running theme in the NFL. But this is also a team that caught every break. They won 8 games by 1 score. So a lot. I mean, everyone remembers the Bears game, but there were a few other games too. There was the Cardinals game. I mean, there's a bunch to reel off that I can't get into right now, but this is a team that caught every break, imaginable last year. But I mean, give Daniels his due, though. I mean, he's a second rookie quarterback with 4,000 plus passing yards and 1,000 rushing, and he did everything that was advertised and more. I remember when he came out, I wasn't too sure about him. I thought he was undersized, but he proved me wrong. But this Washington team, I think they're going to struggle a little bit this year because you put down the wins that were so close. That doesn't happen. That doesn't consistently happen year after year. I don't say you get found out, but you kind of revert back to the mean, so to speak. But it's a team that is, obviously with the Robinson situation, but we did see his probable replacement, Krosky Merritt, score a touchdown against the Bengals Monday. So that kind of proved our point when we spoke on the live show Monday about that replacement. It looks like it's already cast on.
It's instant validation for that one. I loved that.
Oh yeah, we'll take credit.
Both patting ourselves on the back for that one.
100%. And the O-line that they've beefed up a little bit with Laramie Tunsil. I still have huge questions about that secondary. Like I always say, it's still got Marshawn Lattimore back there. But I do also have some questions about the age. This is an older team. Bobby Wagner, Von Miller, Frankie Louvu. The secondary scares me. I mean, you have Will Harrison Sandstrel, who's probably the top player in that whole secondary. We saw what happened to Lattimore in the latter stages last year. I just don't rate him as a corner. But it's the same question. It's the narrative that we hear today. Is this going to be a flash in the pan for Daniels? Is it going to be almost like a CJ Stroud year? And will he kind of regress a little bit? Obviously, he's not going to have the season he had last year. I mean, that was just lightning in a bottle. Everything worked for him. He's a great quarterback. I think he's going to be a great leader for that team. But I have too many questions with the Commanders in regards to the ability to stay healthy, because they, like I said, they caught almost every break last year. Everything ran in their favor, even the close games. But when you look at the start of their schedule, I mean, you can't really argue that they're going to be in a tough spot by the end of October. I mean, they start Giants, Packers, Raiders, Falcons, Chargers, and Bears. I mean, they're all winnable games, and they're going to ride that wave that they went into last year, despite getting blown out by Philly in the championship game. But still, there's so much positivity. Again, we go back to the new ownership, to talking about the new stadium, to talking about things changing in DC and moving the team back to DC. Everything just seems to be kind of going their way right now. I don't think 12-5 is on their radar. Maybe 9 wins, maybe 10 wins. I think that's probably their target this year, or at least that's probably their what they're going to end up with. The secondary scares me and the age scares me, so I think they're going to regress just a little bit.
Brian, hard to argue that the Commanders didn't overachieve last year, but there's not necessarily too many reasons to be overly down on the meter. Like, getting back to the playoffs is probably success, right? They don't necessarily have to go all the way to the championship game. You can't hold them to too high a standard. Can they do that?
I think they can be in the sweepstakes come December, certainly to be in the playoffs. Like Kieran's alluded to the schedule there. You're actually comparing the schedule. We didn't really kind of factor in the Eagles starting with such a tough schedule. Cowboys week 1, big division clash. You're talking them going into Kansas City. They got Tampa Bay in their own right on a great side. They got the Rams. And then on the flip side, you talk about Kieran. I said they've got very winnable games. I imagine they'll still lose a couple of games. Last season, a perfect storm. I read it today. On our soft schedule, elite health, historic 4th down plays throughout the course of the season, including the one against your Bears, and 9 wins in 1-score games. Like we've talked about the Vikings a couple of years ago and how the trend tends to reverse the following season. That's how I could see it coming. It could be the fault for them this year that they don't find ways to navigate victories in these close games. They come out the wrong side of them. The law of averages is they're not going to win all those games. And I'm with Kieran, and you look at, as strong as they were going into the playoffs, they were greatly exposed in 2 flaws of their defense over the course of that game against the Eagles. Their secondary was exposed terribly, and the run defense, which in particular in the 4th quarter, if you look at the run stats in the 4th quarter games last year, was they were winning. They were giving up a huge chunk of yards, and it was evident in the very first play of that playoff game against the Eagles when Saquon Barkley goes to the house for the touchdown. They never recovered. Like, I don't want to all factor into one game, but I don't think they've done enough over the course of the offseason to address those issues. I still think their defense, which is also aging, as Kieran's alluded to, could put them could compromise their situation in terms of making it back to the playoffs. Come December, I believe they will be there. I think Jayden Daniels took that team on their back at times last year. I still believe he's got all the accolades to do that again this season. Whether it will be enough in a division where I think every team will be better, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not convinced they're going to be back in the playoffs, but certainly in the sweepstakes come December.
Yeah, I'm just checking the date of that Commanders-Bears game. It's the 14th of October. I hope after the 14th of October, I never have to hear mention of that fucking Hail Mary play ever again. The Bears will no doubt have put new embarrassing plays in the books by that stage, which we can talk about. But
note to Ben Costello, beep
20
minutes in. Connor's stressed and cursing.
We don't have to worry about the watershed tonight, no.
It doesn't normally take 20 minutes for me to get that stressed out talking about the Bears, and they're not even in this division. I don't know how we even got there, but thanks to that